What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about SoFi. I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, what might cause some volatility in the stock price, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So starting off, this upcoming week is going to be interesting, and that is a massive understatement. So starting off on Monday, we do have durable goods and Dallas Fed Manufacturing Index. Although those aren't really that big of a deal, Monday is going to be digesting this that did come out over the weekend, where Trump said if Canada makes a deal with China, it will be immediately hit with a 100% tariff against all Canadian goods and products coming into the States. So we all know that the market does not look favorably on these types of tariff threats. So we'll have to kind of wait and see. And as soon as I saw this, I remember Trump immediately, day one, was like, good job, Canada, on the deal. And turns out he did. Pretty much day one, he endorsed the deal. So Trump was very happy that Canada got a deal. But clearly things have changed since then, so he doesn't really like that. So once again, market is going to be digesting this come Monday. Aside from that, on Tuesday, we do have ADP employment and consumer confidence. In the past, both of those have really moved the broader market, so just watch for that. On Wednesday, we do have the interest rate decision, so it is fair to assume that we will not be getting any cut. But as per usual, what Powell says afterwards, that's going to really change and shake up the broader market. Thursday, we have initial jobless claims, some manufacturing data, so that's going to be kind of what moves the market that day, for data points at least. And then on Friday, we have PPI. So it's going to be a fun-filled week of data. And then when it comes to companies putting out their earnings, we have a lot of big names, such as Microsoft, Meta, Tesla, MasterCard, Visa. It'll be interesting to see kind of their future guidance, I guess, based on the credit card limitation of 10%. So that'll be a big one. But yours truly, so SoFi putting out their earnings after or before the market does open on Friday. So they did switch it up. Normally in the past, it's always like Monday or Tuesday. So I believe this is like the first time that they've ever done a Friday. Correct me if I'm wrong about that. Current estimates are for their earnings is 11 cents for the earnings per share, 982.39 million for the revenue, and over the last 90 days we have 16 positive revisions to the earnings per share, 0 negative. So analysts are very optimistic. Closer to the date, maybe Monday or Tuesday, I'll do a little bit more of a deeper dive on what Wall Street is really going to be paying attention to for SoFi's earnings. But nonetheless, SoFi does always do phenomenal. Historically, whatever happens to their earnings sometimes doesn't really make that big of a difference. The market just moves SoFi how it wants sometimes, but definitely big things are coming. And so far, based on the estimates, it looks like analysts are forecasting even solid double-digit growth for the earnings per share over this next several years, and same goes for the revenue. But aside from that, near the second half of the week, most likely the market is also going to be digesting this right here. So potential another shutdown, even though we just in November, I think it was November 12th, concluded that one. A lot of Fed speakers since then mentioned that if we have another shutdown, a lengthy one, that could really impact a lot of key metrics. And so in general, that's going to be another fun one. Current estimates are that there's like a 70-something% chance, 75% chance of that occurring. And in all fairness, I think that is going to occur. So don't be surprised if we see some like a lot of volatility, and it might be just poor timing, I guess, for SoFi's earnings. Obviously, you couldn't really forecast that all that much, but in general, SoFi and Friday, that might be a gong show, especially. But aside from that, there really isn't anything planned for this upcoming week. As per usual, the week of their earnings, we always get 1 or 2 analyst ratings, so don't be surprised if something comes down the pipeline. For shorts, so currently sitting at 9.25% of the free floats being shorted. That works to be 115 million shares. First time ever in SoFi's history, we're going into a earnings with naked shorting. So only 103 million is on loan. That shouldn't happen. Should never have more shares being shorted than on loan. Cost to borrow kind of on the low end, 0.34, but that's always been SoFi's case. So be very interesting to see what SoFi does the days leading into SoFi's earnings. That might be an insight to see if maybe they're bullish, bearish, or whatever else. But from a bull standpoint, you do see a consensus for it to be roughly around that $29 to $30 range. Bears are anticipating for it to be kind of 24 to 25, and that is kind of justifies and it makes sense because the implied move is 7.41%, so roughly a $2 move in either direction is anticipated. So for those of you that are kind of playing SoFi's options, or earnings through options, let me know. Are you straight out buying just call options? Are you flip side? Are you just buying puts? What are you generally doing? I myself, I don't believe I have any options expiring for this week. I did have some that expired January the 23rd, but a lot of mine are laddered kind of throughout the following, like March, April, May. But potentially if SoFi does have a dip come Monday because of the whole Canada type of scenario, I'd be very much willing to sell some puts and potentially even do some long calls on SoFi. So this week will be a pretty volatile week nonetheless, but with it at 25.85, it is smack dab in the middle between this pivot and this S1. So 25.25 is going to be a key support, followed by 24.01. So again, that 24.01 could potentially be touched. It's within the estimated implied move from their earnings. And then 27.26 followed by 29.26 is going to be the next round target / resistance point. So this week you could see some very crazy swings. So for those of you that are day traders, swing traders, you can make some pretty good money overall. But aside from that, and moving on to the actual chart itself, hopefully a lot of you do appreciate that I like to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm not here to just hype you up. I give you realistic expectations. And as much as I'd like to say that the chart looks good, it doesn't. So right now it is below the 10, 100, and also the 50-day moving average. So not necessarily the best. It does typically signal that it wants to consolidate. Of course, the week of their earnings, you have that, you have the whole government shutdown, you have Canada, you have a lot of big companies putting out their earnings. That could cause a lot of volatility in either direction. So let's say there isn't a shutdown and things somehow fix itself with Canada, then yeah, you could easily see a retest of maybe that 50 or even 100-day moving average, or potentially even higher than that. Or the latter could happen and you could see some further consolidations. But for face value going into this upcoming week, it doesn't look that great. We do have that 200-day moving average sitting at 22.33. I don't believe that even worst case scenario will be hit this week, but again, if we do consolidate, we could be seeing a retest of this. So on November the 21st, when we did have that dip, it hit roughly that $23 range. Realistically, that could be maybe where SoFi again does bounce off of. But looking at the market position going into this upcoming week, we have a lot of willing sellers and not that much in willing buyers. So I think a lot of big money as well is sitting on the sidelines, just watching and waiting to see how some of the key data plays out. And plus, I'm sure once Powell's speech does conclude, that might cause some big institutions to maybe get back into the broader market. So let me know your thoughts on SoFi. Where do you think things are going to go? I know a lot of individuals are assuming $35 is on the table, and that's where SoFi is going to really move towards. 2026 is going to be big for SoFi, and they have a lot of big things that they can mention in their future guidance, like cryptocurrency. They're really going gung-ho towards that. So their future guidance is going to be a big attributing success factor for SoFi's earnings. So we'll have to wait and see how things do play out. As I always say though, it is very difficult to catch the highs and the lows of SoFi. Best thing that you can do is just dollar cost average. So let me know your thoughts. Hopefully everyone's having an amazing weekend thus far. One final thing I do want to share with you though is pop over to my stacked account. I lowered this down to $10 per month, and it is going to conclude at the end of this weekend. So if you get in, it will never increase whatsoever. And so that's for day trades. These are some of the day trades I did put out, for instance, on Friday. So BNAI went up 90%, after hours up another 255%. Everything was solid green except for REVB. But if you actually look at the day trades, the high was $1.45. So there was a lot of good opportunity to make some pretty good money. So definitely worthwhile to pop over there, take a look. So yeah, with all that, appreciate all of you guys watching, and hopefully everyone's having an amazing weekend thus far. With all that, appreciate all of you watching.